So hello everybody, welcome to our third video in a series of our Meet Me videos. Today we are getting to know Olive Gallop. And instead of extensively introducing you, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, sounds good. So hi, yes, my name is Olive Gallop. I have worked for AA&E for 7 years since this past January. And gosh, what is my title nowadays? It is our facilitation specialist here in IFS. What does IFS stand for again?
Individual and Family Services.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So here in, I am our facilitation specialist here in individual and family services. I have been running groups for AA&E since I was hired here, and I continue to do so through today. My niches nowadays are running groups for folks at the intersection of being both queer and autistic. I am queer myself. I am a trans woman. My pronouns are she, they. And I also happen to be published on that topic at that very same intersection. Um, and gosh, what else? I guess that's what I've got for now. I think if I were to win a superlative amongst the staff here at AA&E, it would be the one who changes her hair color the most often.
That's true. You do change your hair color pretty often. I think people are always like noticing your new hair color and stuff in our meetings. Um So great. Thank you, Liv, for introducing yourself. And I guess my first question for you is just like, what does a regular like work day for you look like? Like, what kind of responsibilities do you have on a daily basis? I know you said that you run groups.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So I will also be in lots of our staff meetings. For instance, this video that we are recording right now was recorded on a Wednesday, which is when we have our um, department meeting, all staff meeting, and clinical staff meeting, all on the same day. And during those meetings, I often am giving advice from the perspective of being a group facilitator, but also being somebody on the spectrum. I've been diagnosed since I was, I believe, 6. Um, and the lived experience from both of those different pieces, I feel, are very valuable to my fellow facilitators and just all my fellow staff members in general. Um, Also, just having been doing groups for a total of 7 years now, I feel like I have some experience gathered from doing so. So I feel like I'm able to contribute to everybody's understanding and like comfort around doing um, all these groups that that so many of us here at AA&E conduct. Um, so lots of meetings, and then I am part of our social media efforts that our lovely Ryan Walsh is spearheading here at AA&E, and and so often I'll be in some meetings having to do with that, where we discuss content that our population will enjoy hearing about or participating in, and so that is like a really nice, unique experience because I find that finding things that are pertinent to our autistic community, both in the sense of it being like just good for autistic folks, but also like particularly what our population wants to, hear about and talk about, what might be on, excuse me, on their minds, just at the time we like at yeah, I guess just what might be on their minds. Yeah, I'll stop at that sentence. But yeah, so that's there's a lot of like what's the right word that I'm looking for here? It's like there's a lot of like uh I guess keeping up with our our community. because of these efforts. And I feel like that is really nice, not only for the community, but for us, the staff members who are participating in that, because that makes it so that we have to, like stay up to date on like not only clinical stuff but also social stuff with autistic folks. And that is so important because I feel like just the like autistic culture is something that is essentially like non-existent in mainstream media, and so we have this cool little effort down here on the ground to make some light of it and build a little community around it, and I just think that's wonderful. This is a very long tangent from me saying that part of my day is participating in our social media efforts, but if any of that sounded inspiring or interesting, please feel free to check out AA&E's Infinity and Beyond, which happens on the first Monday of each month, where we do our lovely little podcast style of live stream. So feel free to tune in. And then, getting back to your question of what do I do on a given day, Ryan? I normally at night I will do either one or two facilitation groups, like I described earlier. For instance, tonight, since it is a Wednesday, it will be D&D, which I am very proud to say that AA&E brings D&D as a as a support group, which is like not only is it fun and community building, but like it's also like trying to think of more adjectives. I'm having the classic autistic moment of I know how I feel, but to put it into words is difficult. Um, but like like it's like team building. It's like some people take on leadership roles, so it's like leadership training, and then it's all about cooperation, and then like reading cues and stuff, and so it's all like there's like very valuable lessons to be taught in D&D, and I'm just so stoked that A&E takes it on as a support group, and then also I get to play D&D, so that's pretty cool. But so that's one example of a group I might run at night. Um, Others are the queer groups, like I mentioned earlier. I used to do just like general games nights, which I believe Bob does now.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so.
yeah, for sure. And then I'll do like general support groups for just like anybody who wants to join, which are great for folks who might be new to their diagnoses and just trying to like try out having a support system. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's about a day in the work life of Liv.
Yeah, I think, I think you're well known as a facilitator, like a long-term facilitator in the organization. And like I know that, the advice that you give when we do our facilitator training and like all of our facilitator stuff is like super important. And then, your voice at clinical and like, at just our staff meetings and everything is just always like, so well like received. And I think it's just so needed. And
Thank
so
you.
I guess I have two questions for you, and you can answer them in whichever order you want. My first question for you is, um, like what is your experience as a facilitator? Like how has that grown over time? And then my second question for you is, as an autistic adult at A&E, like what is your experience, with that? Because you're the first autistic employee other than myself to do this interview, and I really want people to know like what our internal culture is like around that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually gonna go ahead and answer that one first because I'm like really excited to talk about that. Um, of course, everyone at AA&E is sensitive to um, the nuances that come with being around autistic folks, and I'm really grateful for that. Um, but also like we have like several more neurodivergent employees, most of which are autistic. Some also have ADHD, or other things, and working with fellow neurodivergent folks has been the best thing to happen to me in my work life I think literally ever. And the reason for that is because on the practical side of things, working in a way that behooves like my neurodivergence is like it makes working so much less complicated and stressful. Like if you ask any autistic person who has tried to be in the working world, um, generally you're going to get a comment about how like, oh, like they're really unkind to like my sensory needs, or like nobody understands when I'm just having a completely overwhelming day and can't do anything. um that none of that is present here at AA&E, and I'm so grateful for it. So that's the tangible side of things. But then the social side of things is great too, because working with fellow neurodivergent folks um, makes like ease of communication like so much better, and like we're able to like be like funny and friendly with each other in a way that is, I think kind of lost on um, like other like like other coworker situations. Um, So that's really nice. And then also like, even outside of like my fellow neurodivergent coworkers, like everybody has some sort of an understanding of like, oh, you are an autistic person. Therefore, even if I don't quite understand you, I should listen to you and like treat, whatever you're telling me as a learning experience if I don't know about it already. And so, no matter which side of things I'm on there, I'm very grateful to have this environment that is good to me. Um, and I can directly contrast this with this other job that I've had for a little bit, which I will not name right now because I technically still work there. Um, but it's a retail situation, and it's so unkind. It's so just like, oh, you're not meeting our standards. Well, then you're getting literal points on your record against you about it. So, like, and it it makes me so resentful, especially as somebody with a PDA profile who like, if somebody's like, haha, you did the wrong thing, and I'm like, no, I didn't. Like it's very frustrating. um but again, all to highlight that the culture here at AA&E, um like at its worst, if you could even call it that, is very curious to know about how I operate as a person. And at its very best, it already knows and, is just able to work with me and be kind to me. Um, so, yeah, I'm very grateful for our culture here at AA&E, all the way from the practical, tangible side of things to the, social and humorous side.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with a lot of, the different points that you brought up. And I think that like just the idea of at its worst, it's people who are very curious to like learn and like be inclusive. And then at its best, it's an environment where we're already seen, we're already being recognized, we're already being listened to. And I think that that's just it, like you said, is just a stark contrast to a lot of other working environments. And I think that it's a testament to A&E's community that we can, feel so like just natural in this environment. So thank you for sharing your experience around that. And I think for my last question, I think it would be great if you could just share your like evolution as a facilitator and like, your journey in that regard, because I think that your facilitation experience is just so relevant and, inspiring because you've been doing it for such a long time.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's really interesting because um, there's like three timelines that kind of converge in this one question. The first being like, just relevantly answering your question, where like I've been a facilitator for 7 years. Like, what have you learned in that kind of time? But also, during that time, I have transitioned. I came to AA&E before I came out, so I spent a lot of time, um, you know, as that beforehand, and then I've become a woman. since then, and that has changed, how I've been perceived and the kind of work that I do, and then how I, communicate with my participants. So that's another factor. And then finally, I am growing just as a liberated autistic person, kind of freeing myself from the bonds of feeling like I have to mask, at least here at work. Um, and actually finding power in expressing myself as an autistic person, which then I've found empowers other autistic folks and often makes for really great conversations in the groups that I have. So I'll do my best to like kind of talk about all of those in a nice, concise manner. Um, and yeah, okay, so here we go. But yeah, so I started off in January of 2017. And back then, I feel like I was pretty shy and that I was really just trying to copy who I perceived to be the best facilitators at our organization at the time. Um, and I felt like that was stressful for me just because like I was really unsure of how to act. Because my experience prior to A&E was also in a lot of like human facing sort of roles. For instance, I was a camp counselor, I was a front desk person at a gym, and then I'm also a musician, so like whenever I'm on stage I'm having to address a crowd, so like there's a some overlap in that kind of charisma as well. But nothing as far as um, like mental health support, like in a in this very concentrated fashion that we have here at AA&E. So that's where the learning curve sort of lay, and in that I over the years I've learned that just having empathy and also resources are kind of like the best ways to go about that because I've like if you can relate to what the person is saying, then at the very least you can give them the community camaraderie or whatever, that might make them feel a little less alone, a little more empowered. And if that's where your support ends because maybe you don't know much else about the topic that they're bringing up, that's okay. Like that empoweredness can be very motivating for them to either search for other resources or at least to just like feel good for a little bit. So I try to not feel bad if I can't give anything after empathizing with a person, but if I can, then like the next step of that is to then provide said resources. For instance, I this is something that I'm very proud of having where if somebody is having trouble with work accommodations having to do with being on the spectrum, I have a link at the ready that I can deliver in like less than 3 seconds. If somebody's like, "Oh, I wonder like what accommodations I can get at work," I'm like, "I do," and then I can just deliver that, no problem. Um, anyway, so that's just one example, and I find that um, feeling that empoweredness, I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. Um, and also then having the resources at your disposal, like creates like a like hasty motivation where you're like, oh, like cool, we can do something about this. Yeah, let's do it. Like so that's the kind of thing that I try to like instill in people because like I love it when folks feel motivated and like wanting to help themselves and like if we as autistic people can find that stability and power, then there's going to be more of the kinds of community that I was speaking about earlier, and then it can go outside of the confines of AA&E, and like autistic culture can maybe start to like bleed into mainstream culture, and then we're gonna have like more like spaces, and then just there's the a whole world of possibilities there, and so that's why like I feel righteous in like my way of facilitating because like if that's like the possibilities of where we can go as a population, then I'm proud to be a cog in that machine. You know what I mean? And so that's like the tangible side of things. Um, but then like I was saying earlier, just with my own transition, um, I I've grown up from being a kind of awkward like person masquerading as a boy to a proud trans woman, and in that time, I have found a confidence that has really helped with accepting my spectrum hood as well. Um, and like, I'd like to think that like my efforts to be not ashamed of myself, like, also kind of rub off on my facilitation style for the same goals that I was illustrating earlier. But then also, transitioning has caused my like the kinds of groups that I do to change as well. Because I used to do a group for young men, which was relevant because I used to be a young man. But now, as a trans woman, I do my queer groups, and like it's because I have the relevant experience for it, and or sorry, relevant life for it, I guess. Um, and I just think that's really cool because it almost feels like my work is transitioning with me, and like it feels very poetic, and also just like my work is like listening to me, and by that I mean like my higher ups and the folks that are able to delegate what kind of work that I can do are listening to me, and that feels amazing. So I love that very much too. Um, And I think that's it, because my last point was going to be about being like a liberated autistic person, but I think I described that pretty well in the first segment there. So yeah, I guess that's like how my facilitation style has evolved. Did that relevantly answer your question, or
Yes.
did I just go off on a tangent?
No, I think that that very relevantly answers the question. And also, I think that in your discussion about like the goals of advocacy, because I mean, essentially that's what you've described, right? Is like the, like our advocacy around like the autistic and neurodivergent cultures, like eventually bleeding into the mainstream and like creating that like widespread acceptance. And like, I think that you've just wonderfully described a lot of the feelings that we have here internally. And so, um, thank you so much for sharing your experience in a lot of different ways. And for, really getting into like the meat and potatoes of what our like facilitation is, because I think you just described that so well. Um, and thank you again for talking about our live stream and about like all the things that you do here. And of course, thank you for the work that you do here. Um,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course. Very, very much genuinely my pleasure.
And with that, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Meet Me videos and other kinds of videos. Thank you again so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.
Bye.